Hi PGs, and welcome to the PG Podcast Christmas edition. It is so good to be with you on YouTube or in your ears, in your earbuds, on your podcast. I'm so excited that you spent this year with me, and I'm so excited to be here winding down till Christmas. You know, it's Monday, and in just 2 days it's going to be Christmas Day 2019, and we're here in the studio today, and I'm so excited about the podcast. In fact, I have guests in the studio today. Can you guys say hi? I know you're hearing a lot of testosterone in a PG podcast. That sounds kind of weird, but you know what? Here's a secret. Lots of guys listen to the PG podcast because it is that good. So I encourage you, girl. So many of you have already said your husbands listen, your sons listen, your kids, your brothers listen, and I'm so okay with that, because once God calls you, it doesn't matter if you're male, if you're female, whatever age you are still chosen, and nobody can uncall you. So today I have a super extra special, super duper, really awesome podcast. It's a Christmas edition, and it is my 5 favorite quotes by my favorite leadership guru of all time, besides the man Jesus Christ himself, and that's John Maxwell. If you know me, you know I follow and subscribe to most, if not all, of his teachings on leadership. I love them. I think they're so simple, they're so easy, they're time tested. He is old and wise, and so I'm gonna give you my 5 favorites. And I guarantee you, if you listen to them and if you implement them in just today, in the next 15 minutes, you will become a better leader just by knowing these things. So if you're ready, let's jump in. So I know among our Preacher Girl community, by the way, do you know there are about 1,500 of us? I know. In less than a year, we've gone from 1 Preacher Girl to over 1,300, almost 1,500 preacher girls. I'm telling you, that's only God. And among us, there is every kind of preacher girl, from those who are in Sunday school to those who lead teams of doctors and teams of attorneys and churches with thousands of people in it. You are a magnificent bunch of women, and God has called you to lead people, and that's why today I want to give you my 5 favorite leadership quotes, because if you are not living by these or applying these to your life, then by doing so you're going to give yourself an edge, and I'm excited. You can implement these whether you're in school, whether you're the head of a huge corporation, whether you're the president of a country. These will still work for you. The first one, and I want to read it so I don't misquote Mr. Maxwell. The first one is that a leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Ta-da! Is that awesome? I know. Have you ever followed somebody who didn't know where they were going? Isn't that frustrating? I don't know about you, but I remember, being with my husband in a car and us going somewhere, and I knew we were lost. I knew it. Oh, I knew it. By the time I saw the mall for the 3rd time, I could tell he did not know where he was going. So I would say, honey, would you like to ask somebody directions? But no, men generally don't need directions. So he said, no, I know exactly where I am. An hour and a half later, we stopped to ask directions. What am I saying? A true leader knows the way. We gotta know where we're going, or else people will follow us nowhere. If you are a true leader, not only do you know the way, but you will go the way. You can't direct people to go to a place where you are not willing to go to yourself. A good leader will get in the trenches and do what you're asking other people to do as well. I can't stand those people that says you do that and you do that, and they won't do it themselves. You've got to be that kind of leader that leads by example. Do you know that's what Jesus was? That's exactly what he did. In fact, he took his robe off and put a towel around his waist and washed the feet of his disciples, and then he told them, as you have seen me do, you do as well. So a good leader knows the way and goes the way, and finally they show the way. A good leader says, this is the path that you must take. I know it, I did it, now you do it. When you get to the end of it, I would have been there already. I would see you all the way through to where God meant for you to be. So that's my first quote by John Maxwell. A good leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way.
Tip number 2.
Tip number 2. Thank you, Mariah. You've got to be, as a good leader, close enough to relate and far enough ahead to motivate. Close enough to relate means that because I walk alongside you, I can say I know what you're going through. If I'm poor and you're rich, you can't tell me you feel what I'm feeling unless you know what it's like to be without. But if you're the kind of leader that can say, I identify with your struggle, I know where you are, I know where you've been, I know where you're going to end up, and I'm here to tell you that God can see you through. That's what it means to be close enough to relate. But see you through. That's what it means to be close enough to relate. But true and authentic leadership doesn't stay there. Even if you're close enough to relate, you've got to make sure you're far enough ahead to motivate somebody. So even though I have been where you are now, I didn't stay there. In fact, I overcame those things and went ahead. A good leader is far enough ahead so that those you are trying to speak to can say, you know what, if they can make it, so can I. I want to be where they are. So you want to stay close enough to relate to your people, but far enough ahead of them in order to motivate them. This is especially true in the spirit. On January 2nd, we start a 21-day fast in our church. Do you think I could possibly convince my people to fast for 21 days and say, but I, on the other hand, will be eating ice cream every single day? No. I've got to stay close enough so that they can relate to me and see me starving a little bit and see me struggling and see me sneaking peanuts in, now and then when I'm not supposed to be having peanuts. See me making those same kinds of mistakes and having those same kinds of struggles, but yet seeing me finish. They've got to know if she can make it all the way, I can make it all the way too. And that was tip number 2.
This is tip number 3.
Thank you, Shania. Tip number 3. Now I want you to listen in, because this one has taken me all the way through from high school to where I am today. Sometimes you have to say no to what is good so you can say yes to what is best. As leaders, you have to be able to differentiate what is good from what is best. Not everything that is good means you have to adopt it, that you have to do it, and that you have to subscribe to it. Sometimes you say no to a good thing in order to say yes to the best thing possible. Every year as a pastor, I get a million suggestions. Pastor, let's have a soup kitchen. Pastor, let's feed the hungry. Pastor, let's clothe the naked. Pastor, let's do this, do that, do the other thing. Oh, have a great idea. Let's throw confetti up in the air every time we have church. The ideas are a million a day, and sometimes I just want to say yes to everybody because I'm excited when people come up with new and ingenious ideas. But a true leader knows when to say, thank you for suggesting that. I don't think that's what we're going to go with. But then something incredible like Hope in Manhattan comes along and somebody says, let's go do church in the middle of Times Square. And all of a sudden you're thinking, wait a minute, it's not just church, it's home. That means that we're going to take home outside of the walls to people who might never be in a church. All of a sudden, this is not a good idea. This is the best possible idea. As human beings, we are just prone to saying yes to good things. And it's great to say yes, but don't say yes to everything. Sometimes you have to say no, and we talked about it in a previous podcast. You have to say no to some things in order to keep room for when that best thing comes along. That's where the Holy Spirit is most important. Because even though human nature says, say yes, say yes, say yes, He'll say, hold up. Take a break. Think about it. And sometimes I've found in my own life just waiting a little breath, 2 days, 1 day, praying about it tonight and saying, Lord, if you don't mean for me to do this, then show me what's better. Show me what's different. And then God just opens a door and you think to yourself, oh my God, if I had said yes to that, I would have missed out on this. Just before I moved to New York, I got offered to have a church in another state. I got the building, I got the people, I got the car, and I got the salary. And I said yes. very hastily said yes, because as a woman, you didn't get offered a church. Nobody offers girls churches. And somebody offered me a church. I was ready. And that night, the Holy Spirit came to me in a dream and said, don't say yes, because it might be a good thing, but it's not your best thing. My best thing was New York. My best thing was Hope NYC. My best thing was Preacher Girl and meeting every single one of you to tell you that if God called you, no one can uncall you. So sometimes you've got to say no to the good in order to say yes to the best. That is my nephew, the first male guest on the PG podcast. Thank you, Xavier. And my fourth John Maxwell leadership tip that I love so much is this. I'll read it. The greatest day in your life is when you take total responsibility for your attitude. That's the day you grow up. Wow. I'm going to just seal all that for a minute. The day you take total responsibility for your own attitude, it is the day you grow up. My dad taught me something a long time ago. He said, people hear your words, but they feel your attitude. Look at somebody and say, wow. They hear your words, but they feel your attitude. It is easy to blame our attitude on our circumstances. It's easy to blame our attitude on other people, on our childhood, on our past, on our grades, on our salary, on our pressure, on the amount of work that we have to do. We have a million reasons why our attitude stinks. But the day you take full and complete and total responsibility for your own attitude is the day as a leader you truly grow up. The day you say, you know what, 80% of what happens in my life is how I deal with what happens to me, not necessarily what happens to me. How you deal with it, how you handle it, how you respond to it, that's in your control. And as human beings and as preacher girls and as leaders, we can always choose what kind of attitude we're going to have no matter what the situation may be. Because people hear your words, but they feel your attitude. And as a leader, you have a responsibility to make sure that what people feel coming from you is authentic, it's genuine, and it's just like Jesus.
This is tip number 5.
That's Travis. Thank you, Travis. Tip number 5, John Maxwell leadership tip number 5 that I like the best is this. The greatest mistake that you'll make in your life is to live in constant fear that you'll make one. I'll say it again. The greatest mistake you can make in your life is to live in constant fear that you will make one. A mistake, that is. So many people lose out, miss out, never take a risk because they're afraid of making a mistake. And preacher girl, I gotta tell you something. Every day you live, you're probably gonna make a mistake. There are many, because as long as you live in the human body, as long as you're surrounded by human flesh, human desires, as long as you're mortal, until the day you see Jesus face to face and become like him, you will be prone to mistakes. There will be times that you fail, and it will be times that you don't do what you want to do, and you find yourself in situations that you didn't mean to be in the first place. And I'm here to tell you that Jesus is not surprised by any of that. When I came to the revelation, it wasn't too long ago actually, when the Holy Spirit spoke to me directly and said, you do not disappoint me. Because disappointment is that space between expectation and realization. In other words, you get disappointed when what you expect doesn't come to pass. But God doesn't ever expect anything of you that you're not gonna do. Why? Because he is omniscient. He fully knows you. He knew you fully before he put you in your mother's belly. That means you can never disappoint him. Yes, you disappoint yourself. Yes, maybe your pastor, your friends, and your family, but you can never disappoint your Abba. He has full disclosure, full knowledge of you, and loved you and loves you anyway. Isn't that amazing? And that means when you make a mistake, you have his permission to ask his forgiveness and to also forgive yourself. And don't be afraid of making them. Take the risk. No risk it, no biscuit. So if you want biscuits, take the risk. Step out on a limb sometimes. The people that do the greatest things are the ones who will dare to do what nobody else will dare to do. The ones who will say, so what if it's never been done before? Maybe I'm the one that I'm gonna do it. So what if no preacher girl has a community that big? Who cares? We want 5 million preacher girls in here. Let's do that. Let's do that. And what if it fails? What if what we've imagined doesn't come to pass? So what? It's not a big deal. It won't be because we didn't try. So preacher girl, if I could tell you anything today, I would say don't be afraid of taking a risk. Don't be afraid of stepping out on a limb for Jesus, because if you fall, he'll catch you every single time. He'll catch you.
And this is the conclusion.
Thank you, Nahil. But there it is, girls. Those are my 5 favorite John Maxwell leadership quotes. I have a million of his. I've written them down ever since I can remember, before I was ever a pastor. But I want to tell you something. They're just words unless you believe it. They're just words unless you implement it. Every single one of these can cause a shift in your thinking. And once your thinking shifts, your whole life will shift. Once your thinking changes, everything around you organically begins to change when you change the way you think. Because when you change the way you think, your attitude changes. When your attitude changes, you become a better leader. And when you become a better leader, you become more like Jesus. So I just want to say, from my family, my friends, my church, and our PG group to you and yours, have the best and most Merry Christmas ever. I love you. The next time I see you, it's going to be just a day away from New Year's Eve. And remember, girl, if God called you, then no one can uncall you.